Welcome to Busted Speakers, I'm Ed.
And I'm Alex.
And today we're going to be reviewing the very much welcomed surprise release of the fourth Fleet Foxes album, Sure. If you don't know who Fleet Foxes are, I can describe them pretty succinctly by saying they're one of the most just plain lovely bands going these days. If you're into your folk music with lush instrumentation and you haven't heard these guys, you should definitely check them out. They're fronted by Robin Pecknold, who's kind of the main brain of the group and pretty much writes all the songs from what I understand. But this new album is definitely kind of a change of pace for them because I feel like Robin has purposefully decided to make this a big contrast to the band's previous 2017 album Crack Up, which was easily the most personal album that he's made. But I think this album is more outward looking and communal in a way. In the songwriting, like I say, there's a more outward looking and less solipsistic vibe than previous Fleet Foxes albums permeating all the way through this record. And this kind of ties in with the way the album was made as well, because there's a much greater collaborative element to the various personnel that appear on the record. There's also tributes to other artists and influences that Robin has had, people such as David Berman on the opening track Sunblind, well, if you ignore the shorter intro track, and various other artists who sadly have passed away in recent years. And also, the album actually opens with a guest vocalist who I stupidly didn't find the name of, but she was actually just a fan on Instagram who had recorded a cover of the Fleet Foxes song Mykonos from the Sunshine EP. And Robin found her and decided to ask her to be the first voice you hear on this album. And that's just a really cool way of, getting across the concept of the record, I think.
I think that song and Drops in the River from the Sunshine EP are still two of my favourite Fleet Foxes songs, honestly.
They're great. Like, if you've only heard the albums, then definitely look into that EP. I love Mykonos too. But yeah, speaking on the communal aspects of the album, I think this is where the inspiration for the title of the record comes from. And I don't know if there's any information about this out there that confirms or debunks this, but after mulling over the themes of the album for a while, I feel it sort of clicked into place for me, because it got me thinking about how beaches and beach shores are a very collective shared place where families and friends relax and spend time away from the turbulence of modern living.
True.
They're also a common location for the scattering of ashes, which arguably ties in with the tributes to the likes of David Berman on this record. It's like a celebration of the binding of community through music and the art life of musicians, living and deceased, which the metaphor of a beach shore fits perfectly, I think. Initially I was like, shore? Like, really? What does that even mean as an album title? And with how simplistic the lyricism on this album is compared to previous records by Fleet Foxes, it's easy to think that there's not much going on here conceptually, but I think the way the album delivers those concepts is really interesting. What were your thoughts on this record, Alex? I don't know if you have sussed out like the conceptual side of it, but I don't feel like it's that important to enjoying these songs, really.
I cannot say I particularly have. I feel like a very shallow person on the shore here.
Well, like I said, I haven't seen anyone else bring this up. I've seen people talk about the communal aspects, including Robin himself in an interview, but my theory on the title, I haven't heard anyone else say that yet. It's only been a week since it came out. But
I like that a lot.
That's
I like
my theory.
that it's come specifically from you, honestly. I feel like the communal aspects of Fleet Foxes have been true since day one.
Yeah.
Especially, obviously, just the very friendly, together, communal vibe from the debut in Sun Giant. And to be honest, with maybe the slight exception of Crack Up, I feel like, in general, they're a band that's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try and fix it, because I feel like they have had a vibe, a sound that has stayed true for most of it. Now, when I say excluding the Crack Up, I feel like that went for a slightly different approach / sound.
Yeah, it had more of an experimental, like sample-based and also very weirdly sequenced set of songs, I'd say. In a good way, like the arrangements are very strange.
A bit more personal, and I feel like that's something that plays in throughout all of the Fleet Foxes material. Like the title track of Helplessness Blues is arguably my favourite song by them, and that's an incredibly personal, evocative song.
It's my favourite too.
Oh, good pick, man.
Yeah.
So, sure, it's their fourth album, it's a super consistent listen, and honestly, it's just another great Fleet Foxes album.
Yeah.
Although its consistency almost detracts from sort of any sense of dynamic range, as there's a very uniform sound palette here. Like, I felt like Crack Up is a bit more dynamic and varied, ever so slightly, but still definitely in sort of indie contemporary folk sound, if you get me.
No, I completely agree. I mean, I think it, like I said, I think they consciously tried to make this album a contrast to Crack Up, and I think part of that was going with a more straightforward rock-centric approach with more straightforward song structures. A lot of these songs are genuinely just verse, chorus, verse.
Yeah.
Which wasn't the case on their previous two albums at all, or even the debut, really.
Yeah, but I felt that because there's some songs here that genuinely just feel like almost close, but not quite, to indie rock with the prominent drumming on some of them.
Mm-hmm.
But like I say, if you like Fleet Foxes, I cannot imagine a scenario where this album is not at least fairly agreeable to you. This is just more quality Fleet Foxes. Their harmonic melody game is on point, very warm guitar tones throughout, very melodic and sweet singing. It has to be said, I never see this mentioned very much, but Robin Pecknold's voice is amazing.
Oh yeah.
It's so good. Like,
no, it's wonderful.
It is.
Like it matches the music so perfectly. Like, I love his voice.
Yeah. In general, I just think Fleet Foxes have to be one of the most beloved bands of recent times. I mean, they just have to be, because
I'd say this album has kind of cemented them as one of my absolute favorites, because they've released 4 albums. One of them, Helplessness Blues, is, I consider that a 9 out of 10 album.
yeah.
And I give all of their other albums 8s. Not to spoil my score for this, but I don't know. I just love all of them.
I also feel like there isn't a band that plays around with imagery as well as these people, or just Robin himself, do.
Mm-hmm.
And the emotional resonance of it. He sings how he feels, I feel like. Even when the songs aren't super memorable in of themselves, they... Basically, a lot of Fleet Foxes, on a very superficial surface level, do constitute as great background, relaxing listening.
Mm-hmm.
They're definitely one of the most soothing, comforting bands I can think of, while still having a great level of lyrical and musical depth. So that kind of is a summary of why I like Fleet Foxes so much, and why a lot of people probably do. And it kind of summarizes why I like Shore.
Yeah.
They do little things here and there that are a little bit different, but honestly, I guess this could have almost been the follow-up after the debut, kind of.
In a way, yeah.
In a way, but obviously
I'd say,
there's
though,
some development that happened too.
Yeah, I'd say it has more in common with Crack Up than either of the first 2 albums, though, because I think in the same way as Crack Up, it's clear that no expense was spared on having really rich and lush instrumentation on this album.
I'd say so too. I mean, this definitely could be paired up with Crack Up a lot more than the other 2. These are like albums of pairs, really.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And you were saying off mic that a lot of the things you can gush praise about all of these songs are true throughout, like very consistent aspects to these songs you enjoy.
That's really true. Yeah, I mean, you kind of brought up the same thing, and it's like kind of a half praise, half criticism for me. The record only really falters in a few aspects, I'd say, and I think one of them is the greater focus on more straightforward songwriting, as well as the production style being pretty much consistent throughout. As lush as it is, it can result in the track list sometimes having a bit of a repetitive dynamic. It's less on a compositional front, and probably has more to do with the mixing, which is consistently bright and quite rollicking and punchy as well, which is kind of a new thing for Fleet Foxes, and I think it distinguishes this album from their other ones. But I feel like this would have been balanced out better if I dug on the more intimate, sort of less layered songs here, because there are a few. Yeah, For a Week or Two, I'm Not My Season, Thermia as well. They feel like little breaks between the more rocky songs, and I really like I'm Not My Season, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
And For a Week or Two has kind of a sort of weird Baroque progression to it, which I thought was really cool.
I definitely got that with the vocal layering of it.
Yeah. But mostly the record really sticks to its guns. Like, if you don't like Fleet Foxes, this is not going to be the album that changes your mind on them.
No.
Even though it does a few new things, it's easily their most straightforward, even though people have compared it to the debut as being like their most poppy since that album. I'd say it's even more straightforward in a sense, even though the instrumentation is closer to Crack Up's more layered, sort of lush vibe.
It's weird. I feel like the debut had aspects of more traditions of folk to it in a way.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like it was like sort of not like a heritage album, but it did feel like something that people who listen to genuine folk from the 60s could appreciate.
Yeah.
While this, you probably as well, but less so.
So yeah, it's the most straightforward Fleet Foxes record, but it's also wonderfully consistent in sound and quality, I think. It's a very, very minor thing for me to criticize, but it also means that doing track picks is really, really difficult, because I think there's so many songs here that are kind of on the same level for me. I don't know about you, Alex. Like, what were your top 3 tracks?
Okay, that is true to a fair extent.
Yeah.
And I'll just say quickly before I go into my track picks that even though, like, nothing new for the Fleet Foxes here, I would be lying if I didn't say this is one of the most welcome Finns of 2020 as a whole.
Oh, tell me about it. Yeah. I was delighted to see that it was announced literally a day before it was released. Like,
and it was just out there, and I could listen to it midweek. That was amazing, because obviously most of the time we have to wait for Friday. Generally, we have to wait for it. So this was great, and this speaks to us liking stuff that gets surprise dropped. Okay, so into my track picks now. I'm gonna go for "Can I Believe You."
Nice.
I love that song. I just find songs where you never really know what the other person is thinking, and trying to reconcile that in a song to be super engaging. And it has one of the most emotive, passionate vocals here. And it is one of the songs that has one of the more sort of indie rock sounds to it. And just Robin's vocal coming in is super strong.
Yeah, the hook is really, really nice.
I mean, within the confines of this album, that was a lot of different aspects to it to make that a favourite of mine. I also really like "I'm Not My Season." It is different because it is more bare. I like how bare the arrangement on that one is, which accentuates the lyric really well. I didn't look super deep into the lyric, but I like the general idea of, not feeling how everything around you is. And this song is like that. Like, despite your surroundings, you may not feel similar to how that is. So, yeah, I don't know. I like the bare minimalist songs Fleet Foxes do. Like that one from Crack Up, "If You Need To, Keep Time on Me."
Oh, yeah.
I felt like it was a slight continuation of that sort of idea.
I will say, though, like, speaking to the issue I have with the album, none of the mellow tracks on here compare to that song, in my view, or a lot of other songs on Crack Up.
Yeah.
It just seems to be less of a focus. I feel like "If You Need To, Keep Time on Me" has the density that it needs to really work as, like, a mellow song.
I would still say that song's better, but, this is a favourite. And in general, the, like, run of, I don't know how you say this, Miss Stranza, Young Man's Game Into "I'm Not My Season" is my favourite 3-song stretch of the album.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what my third favourite is, but I really like the last 2 songs as well. I feel like "Cradling Mother, Cradling Woman" has the most interesting, fullest, dense sound of any song here, and by far the busiest percussion of any song.
Oh yeah, the layering gets kind of crazy on that song about midway through.
I'm just captivated by the instrumental. Lots of cool stuff happening there. "Going to the Sun Road" is another odd one. I won't go too far into it, just that was the most sunniest, oddest song, and I really like the guest vocalist in the second half as well.
Oh yeah, it's God, was it Portuguese singer?
It may well be. I'm not going to confirm or deny that, as I do not know. And also Shore's just a lovely, beautiful piano ballad to end things off on.
Yeah, and I think thematically it wraps up the album as well as a title track and a closing track should.
You did say 3 favourites, and I gave you about 6, but I will say "Can I Believe You," "I'm Not My Season," and I'll go for "Cradling Mother, Cradling Woman."
Nice. This is what I'm saying, man. It's such a consistent record.
It is. I mean, like, I feel like that was fair to, like, mull over, like, 7 or 8 songs.
Yeah. Well.
And yours?
I honestly think this is one of the most consistent records of the year. When you were saying you love the 3-track stretch from Maestranza to I'm Not My Season, that kind of extends all the way to Going to the Sun Road for me. I love Quiet Air as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, true. I just felt like that was the most exciting part because obviously Young Man's Game might have the best hook of the album,
that
or the most memorable.
that song I'd say leans into the rock influences more than any other track here, and it's
Yeah, I
a
can see that.
logical high point in that regard. But it didn't quite make my top three. Maybe on another day it would.
Well, it didn't make mine either, to be fair.
But I love the song. That's the thing. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It was so hard, but I really really love Sunblind.
Oh yeah.
Just
yeah.
Immediately I was captivated by that song, and seeing the album continue in that direction instrumentally made me really happy the first time I heard this.
And that song sounds like how the album cover looks to me.
Yeah. Oh, that kind of makes sense. But I'd say it's also very sunny and bright. I mean, it's called Sunblind, obviously.
Yeah,
but,
yeah, and it's just like an idyllic. I mean, not that the cover is like an area where you could like swim out into the ocean, because I believe it's like actually. I'm not sure exactly where the cover's from, but it's not exactly the most accessible place. They did have to get a helicopter shot to get it.
Right.
Or a drone shot. I'm not entirely sure.
I've not looked into that too much, but I like how it parallels the Crack Up cover as well. I think these were very consciously related albums in a way. But yeah, Sunblind, absolutely wonderful. The David Berman tribute in the chorus where he mentions swimming in American water, which is a reference to the Silver Jews album, American Water.
Oh yeah.
It's really wonderful. A really lovely tribute, and also the drummer from Berman's last band, Purple Mountains, appears on this song as well, so it kind of ties in together in a really sweet way.
That's really nice.
Yeah, and I love David Berman to pieces, so, rest in peace, and thanks, Robin, for such an amazing tribute. But also the song is just completely wonderful. I'm not, getting teary-eyed over any kind of melancholia here. It's like a celebratory vibe that I get from this song, especially, and other songs. It's
kind of the best kind of tribute.
Yeah, in a way, I'd say, for him. I gotta pick Can I Believe You as well, for many of the reasons that you said. The refrain, absolutely wonderful. This is really an album where the sound of it in general is just so appealing to me that it doesn't even matter that these songs are not that complex structurally, and obviously they're that way by design.
And generally, I appreciated that they were all 3 to 5-ish minutes.
Yeah.
Obviously, okay, I love songs that are longer than that. You've got The Bitters on Helplessness Blues, right? 3rd of May, and even I Am All That I Need. Plenty of obviously they're great at doing lengthier songs.
Yeah.
But I appreciated that, considering how many there are here. They're kind of brisk. It makes listening to the album very engaging and fun and brisk.
I feel like they know when to bring a new idea or a new song in. The pacing on the album is great. I've never felt bored here, despite the dynamics not being as much as the previous albums.
And I don't think I can think of any way they could have sequenced this to make it any more dynamic. I mean,
with the tracks that we have, yeah.
Yeah, for the tracks we had, obviously we don't know what else they could have burning in the back burner, but for what is here, this is as good as it could be presented.
Yeah, it's just those shorter, mellower tracks that don't exactly fall flat for me. The only one I don't really care for is Thermia, which I felt was just repeating ideas from Crack Up in a sort of more watered down fashion.
That kind of tricks you, that one, because the first 2 to 3 seconds of it are this weird finger-picked guitar thing that turn into piano. But even though that part comes back, it's I kind of would prefer a finger-picked thing. Not that the piano usage on this album isn't good, but I don't know.
Yeah, it just felt a bit too obvious at that point for me. And again, just reiterated ideas from Crack Up. I haven't looked into the song much lyrically, but I don't know. Yeah. It's the only track here that I didn't care for that much. But my final track pick is A Long Way Past the Past.
Oh yeah. Are those tracks 2 to 4? Oh no, The Long Way Past the Past is 6, right?
It's a bit later on. I mean, I could easily have picked Hara or Featherweight or Young Man's Game or Quiet Air or Cradling Mother, Cradling Woman. I just love so many songs on this album, but those are definitely my top 3.
There's definitely at least 11 that could be track picks, which is saying something.
But yeah, A Long Way Past the Past speaks to why I managed to whittle it down to these three. I love the song instrumentally, but also lyrically, it's really resonant with me as well. And I like when the instrumental mellows out towards the end, and he says the title of the track in a really nice and wistful way.
Yeah.
These are just lovely songs. I don't know what else I can say, really.
I mean, it's Fleet Foxes back at it again.
Yeah. Back at it again with the white vans.
Back at it again with the great tunes.
Yeah. Well, as much as we say, oh, it's just more great Fleet Foxes, I still think this album stands out in their discography in the same way that Crack Up and Helplessness Blues and the debut do. So, like, I have absolute faith in Robin and company from this point.
It's not derivative of their past sound. This just is how they are, and it's as vitalistic as anything they've done before, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. And also, speaking on the communal themes that I said, it's probably accidental on this front, but because of the current state of the world, I think it was a really nice message to put out there, to like put out this album that feels like it has this sense of togetherness to it, even though that's not what's happening right now.
Are we sure it's accidental? Because aren't we getting to the stage where stuff coming out now could have been written given the current state of the world?
That's true. I mean, I saw an interview with Robin that said that he was working on this before it all happened, but I think that did run into the COVID times.
That's fair.
So.
I wasn't sure. It's just obviously because it was surprise dropped, could have been a bit sooner than what I may have expected. But yeah, that's fair.
Well, he was working on at least elements of the album since Crack Up released, so
like, yeah.
Who knows how far back a lot of this material goes?
That's fair.
But yeah, concluding thoughts, Alex? What score would you give this?
It's going to sound kind of bad considering I've not pretty much said nothing negative about it, but I mean, 7 out of 10 is still a good rating from me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's bad because that is the lowest rating I'd give any Fleet Foxes album, but it's not because they've gone any worse. Okay, so I'd obviously be happy if they released stuff of this quality from now on forever. Obviously, if they like did something a bit more daring, that could be more risky, but it could also be more rewarding. So I'm not entirely sure what else to say other than Fleet Foxes are amazing, and this is another amazing album with a hella consistent track list and great song after great song, great presentation, great production, great mixing, great singing. Everything's great. I love Fleet Foxes. Yeah.
You just prefer the more dynamic.
7 out of 10. Maybe, actually, I'll give them a 7.5 out of 10. Fuck it.
Nice. With the 0.5s again.
I am the purveyor of the 0.5 system, and honestly, I felt like it was slightly better than a 7. So, why not use it if I have established it, I guess?
Yeah, I'm a huge Fleet Foxes fan, so it's probably no surprise that I loved this, because, like, yeah, it does bring a new approach for the band, and I love the different concept in terms of songwriting and just the way the album was put together. But at the end of the day, it still does sound like a Fleet Foxes album, and that's where a great deal of its appeal comes from for me. Yeah, it's their least dynamic record so far. There's not much in the way of experimentation beyond just what instruments are being brought into each individual song, but the arrangements are, I don't want to say par for the course for them, but I don't know. But yeah, overall, I really love this record. It is a very different album for Fleet Foxes, but like I say, it also shares a lot of the same great qualities as Crack Up. It's a big contrast, but also complementary to that album.
Yep.
I feel like it must have been intentional, but that they sort of feel like sister albums to some extent. I do slightly prefer Crack Up because I'm just more of a fan of more ambitious song structures, but this arguably has a more consistent track list to some degree. Like, in terms of something that I just want to throw on, this is a more accessible and more, like, outwardly enjoyable record.
I think this is the most consistent they've been since the debut. I mean, obviously I love Helplessness Blues too, but I don't know, like, as far as a uniform, like, I cannot think of that much weaker than other songs. Like, this is it. This is, like, as perfect as it probably could be right now.
Yeah, put it this way, the surface appeal of this record grabbed me immediately, whereas Crack Up, I think I had to listen to it 2 or 3 times before I could surmise that I really loved it.
That was actually the case for me too.
Yeah. It's just because it's a more dense record, but that's not to say there isn't density here. It's more just in different aspects. It's a very joyous and wistful album without really being overbearing at any point, and there is a lot of musicality to these songs and their arrangements, despite them being as straightforward as they are. The debut is generally considered their most poppy up until this point, their most poppy and accessible, but I'd say this maybe takes the crown now. So if you want to get into this band, this might be a great place to start. I'd
really still
don't
say
know.
the debut. I mean, but
yeah.
maybe that's just because I'm like really fond of it.
Me too.
And consider White Winter Hymnal to be like the catchiest thing ever.
Oh yeah, no, it's hard to top in that regard in terms of catchiness, but yeah. I'd say despite sharing those poppy qualities with the debut, you can definitely feel the impact of the growth and development they've gone through with each subsequent album on this new one. So yeah, I love this. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Kind of par for the course in terms of quality for Fleet Foxes. Helplessness Blues is still my favourite, still the most sort of sprawling album they've released, and I really love it for that. But depending on whichever day it is, I'm going to feel like listening to a different Fleet Foxes album, and that's great. There's just one more added to that lineage now, and I can't wait to see what they do next.
Adds to the catalogue of choices.
Yeah. Okay, so thanks for joining us on this episode of Busted Speakers. Let us know what you thought of the new Fleet Foxes album, Sure, in the comments below if you feel like sharing your own thoughts. And you can subscribe to us, like the video if you feel like it. And you can find us on Twitter at Busted Speakers. Yeah, that's it. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.